Oh Canada is now saying, oh cannabis.
Come summer, there might be a brand new industry in Canadian business, cannabis.
April is National Cannabis Awareness Month.
Have you noticed that everyone is talking about cannabis lately? Why is that? Maybe it's because one of the biggest industries in the world is now investing heavily in it. The tobacco industry's profits have drastically fallen since the mid-1900s, and in an interesting turn of events, tobacco companies are now looking to fill their once flourishing fields with a new crop, cannabis. This means that big tobacco and the alcohol industries believe that they have found the new cash crop of the future, and it's not even federally legal yet in the US. But it is in Canada. Late last year, the tobacco company Altria, best known for making America's favorite cigarette brand Marlboro, turned its sights to some Canadian investments and spent $1.8 billion to acquire 45% stake in a Canadian marijuana company, Cronos. But they are not the only ones. Alliance One, which is a tobacco supplier to Reynolds American, which manufactures Newport and Camel cigarettes, is also getting into the cannabis business. In February last year, Alliance One heavily invested in Canadian medical marijuana facilities. And just 6 months later, in October of 2018, recreational marijuana was legalized in Canada, meaning this was a very good time to invest.
3, 2, 1! The first legal receipt issued in Canada.
Without getting overly technical, it's easiest to say that cannabis is essentially the family of plants that has two separate classifications, marijuana and hemp. The basic difference between marijuana and hemp is that marijuana has a much higher THC count and therefore is medicinally and recreationally used. Since recreational marijuana first became legal in Colorado and Washington in 2012, 8 other states plus Washington, D.C. have followed suit. And experts are estimating that within a decade, legal sales alone could be worth $47 billion. But federally, marijuana remains a Schedule I drug, which means that even though it's legal in some states, it's still considered federally illegal everywhere in the US. This classification makes it on par with heroin, LSD, and ecstasy, which means longer jail sentences and hefty fines if you're caught in possession, buying, or selling these drugs. But it also means that universities can't receive federal grants to study the drug, which dramatically restricts the research that can be done on it. And as a result, the big tobacco companies that are investing in marijuana in Canada have said they aren't interested in investing in the US until recreational marijuana is federally legal. So instead, they're sort of prepping the playing field by investing in hemp farming, which is now 100% federally legal. Alliance One made another big investment last year in a North Carolina hemp processor called Criticality, and all you have to do is quite literally follow the money. Let's take a look at the trends. In the 1950s, nearly half of all Americans smoked, but since the 80s, we've seen a drastic reduction in tobacco sales. It's not the big tobacco companies that are feeling the strain, but rather the local farmers. In 2017, North Carolina launched an industrial hemp pilot program that essentially allowed them to start experimenting with growing hemp for industrial purposes. And for farmers like Ryan Patterson, working with hemp has become a deeply personal experience.
We decided to get a license here in North Carolina and start growing in 2017. And the first crop we had, we harvested that fall, and when we were harvesting, we were trimming the buds, trimming the flowers. And that flower material was real sticky, and you absorb a lot of that CBD in your skin when you're handling it. And we didn't realize it at the time, but as we were handling, we were absorbing it. And my dad first tried cutting some, and with his trimmers, he couldn't hardly cut it, but he kept trying, and after about 15 minutes, he noticed that his hands had completely stopped shaking. And so we were amazed, and it's not going to fix the Parkinson's, but it is helping with the symptoms, and it's definitely made a difference in his life.
While hemp and marijuana are different, some think that cultivating hemp will make it easier to transition to farming marijuana if and when it becomes federally legalized. So there are a lot of incentives to investing more heavily in cannabis. For one, the profits are undeniable. In the case of recreational marijuana, there's the ability to tax it, and the positive effects it has on tackling the illegal drug trade. And when it comes to industrial hemp, the opportunities are significant, like the production of CBD oil, which is said to help people with certain ailments without the effect of getting high. It also makes affordable and durable fabrics, and some have actually suggested it would make a good substitute for synthetic clothing, whose plastic fibers are ending up in the water and then polluting the ocean. This could potentially help eliminate that. The potential that this crop allows for are substantial. Cannabis is currently being heavily invested in by commercial interests, which is making some uneasy because they're afraid it will become too commercialized before enough research is done. But research can't be properly conducted because the federal government needs to remove cannabis from its Schedule I status. So maybe it's time to forget about the stigma associated with cannabis and start looking at the potential benefits the US could gain from investing in cannabis. The Daily Caller Explains takes an in-depth look into complex political issues, so if you want to learn more, subscribe.